Dear scholars, we have been learning a lesson, The Red-Headed League, in which we are going through part first. It is Mr. Wilson's story. Through the previous video, you came to know about many of the characters from the story and what story Mr. Wilson was telling to Mr. Sherlock Holmes and his friend. We have gone through little part of it. According to that story, Mr. Wilson had got a job at Red-Headed League. Let us see further what discussion was held between Mr. Wilson and Mr. Duncan Ross, who was the representative of Red-Headed League. Here we go with this paragraph. Mr. Duncan Ross explained that Mr. Wilson would have to be in the office from 10 to 2. If he left the office, he would lose the job. Spaulding assured Mr. Wilson that he would look after Mr. Wilson's business in his absence. The pay was fixed at £4 a week. So, as the job was offered to Mr. Wilson, what he had to do actually, that was given here. So accordingly, Duncan Ross explained him that he had to be in the office for from 10 to 2, and it was warning that if he left the office, he would lose the job. And whatever business Mr. Wilson had already been running, that was going to be looked after his assistant Spaulding. And for that time period, Mr. Wilson was going to get the salary or the wages of £4 a week. What is further? And the work, said Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson asked what work he had to do. It is the reply. You have to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica. Encyclopedia means reference which provides summary of some things or knowledge. Britannica, it is of Britain. So that encyclopedia he had to copy. The pay was very good and the work was light. Mr. Wilson accepted the job and began his work the very next day. Mr. Duncan Ross was there in the office to see that Mr. Wilson did his work properly and did not leave the office. He told Mr. Wilson to start with the letter A, and accordingly, thinking the pay was good and work was light, Mr. Wilson accepted the job, and from the next day only he started doing job over there. Duncan Ross was looking after him. And at that time, the encyclopedia which he was going to copy, we started with the letter A. Mr. Wilson wrote diligently for 4 hours without leaving his place. Mr. Ross would drop in from time to time to see that all was right with Mr. Wilson. At 2 o'clock, he bade Mr. Wilson good day and locked the door of the office. So it is what for 4 hours Mr. Wilson was busy in writing and copying that encyclopedia, and Mr. Duncan Ross time to time had a look whether he was doing the right work or not. And as it was the time to close the office, that is at 2 o'clock, At 2 o'clock, Duncan Ross said that is bade good day and locked the door of the office, and he went out. Let us see further. This went on day after day. Mr. Holmes said Mr. Wilson, and on Saturday I got my salary. It was the same next week and the same the week after, After a few days, Mr. Duncan Ross came in only once in a while, and after time, he did not come in at all. So, at the beginning, Duncan Ross was completely paying attention on Mr. Wilson whether he was doing right work or not. And as the week was completed, Wilson got his salary, and from the next week, Duncan Ross started visiting the office once in a week, and later on he stopped visiting. Mr. Wilson continued, 8 weeks had passed like this, and I had written about archery, etc. The word starting with A, right? And hope that I might get on to B soon. And now he was going to start letter B. And then suddenly the whole business came to an end. So how long it lasted? That is for 8 weeks. To an end, Sherlock Holmes asked Wilson how it was so. Yes, sir. This morning I went to my work as usual at 10 o'clock. But the door was shut and locked with a little note nailed on it. It said, whatever note written on that lock, it is here. The Red-Headed League is dissolved. October 9, 1880. So the office, the business whole came to an end. That is dissolved. It was the note written on that lock. I was shocked. I did not know what to do. Mr. Wilson went with his story. I made inquiries at the nearby offices, but none of them knew anything about the league. The rooms had been rented under a false name. So when he started inquiring about the Red-Headed League and its office, no people knew about it. And when he had a discussion about the room which was on rent for that office, he came to know that it had been rented under false name. I went home and asked my assistant Spaulding for advice, but he could not help me in any way. I want to find out about the league. Mr. Holmes, who they are and why they played this prank upon me. The whole thing is a mystery. That is why I came to you. I have heard a lot about you. So it is the ending of the story of Mr. Wilson. And he had been to Mr. Sherlock Holmes to find who were those people who played that prank on him. And Mr. Wilson wanted to find those people taking help of Sherlock Holmes, as he had heard about the work of Sherlock Holmes. So whatever done, it was mystery for him. So he wanted to find the reason for that. Holmes found Mr. Wilson's story very unusual. He asked Mr. Wilson, this assistant of yours who first called your attention to the advertisement, what is he like? So, what is the reply? Small, stout, with no hair on his face. He has a white splash of acid on his forehead. So, it is just about his character, how he looks. That Mr. Wilson told about his assistant Spaulding. I thought as much, said Mr. Holmes. Is he still with you? Oh, yes, sir. He is with me only. That is, Mr. Wilson's assistant was with him only. That will do, Mr. Wilson. I can give you my opinion on this subject in a day or 2 days. Today is Saturday, and by Monday we may come to a conclusion. So Holmes assured him that whatever reason for that prank he was going to tell Mr. Wilson by Monday. So this is all about the first part of the lesson, red-headed league. Till this we came to know that Mr. Wilson was pranked upon, or he was deceived in somewhat way. In the second part of the story, we will come to know what Sherlock Holmes do, whether he finds those people or not. I hope you all will understand the given explanation